So my name is Stephan. I was born in South Africa in 1984 and moved to England in 1999 after my mum and dad split up. My mum married an Englishman, which is a bit of a culture shock for me. It's very different to what I'm used to. But I ended up finishing school, joined college, and then wanted to do a bit more with my life, wanted to contribute a bit more to the world, making a difference, and obviously enjoying being outdoors. I ended up joining the army. I joined a regiment called the Light Infantry, which later became the Rifles. And in 2006, after finishing basic training, I went out to Afghanistan for my first tour of duty straight away. And then sort of spent the next 3 years in active service. So after Afghanistan, I went to Kenya, then went to Kosovo, doing something slightly different. And in 2009, went back out to Afghanistan for my second tour of duty. It was in that tour on the 22nd of October that, following sort of routine patrols, I ended up going out, and the section I was with had to hold our position on a small hill to provide cover for the other section that were moving through in the valley beneath us. And the improvised explosive device threat was phenomenally high at the time. And we had kit that we would use to scan the ground to clear them. And to find them even, and despite this we ended up missing one, so I unfortunately stood on the device, which then sent me flying up into the sky, and a big cloud of dust and smoke and huge explosion. And shortly after, I realized that I lost both my legs, one above the knee, one below the knee. I lost a few other bits and pieces as well, fingers, had an open fracture, and just lots of things going on at the time. And but I just remembered sort of feeling that I just needed to remain calm in order to give myself the best opportunity to kind of stay alive, basically, but also to give the guys a chance to be able to get to me and to sort me out, because if I'm sort of flapping around, it's not going to help them. And it was very touch and go. There were moments where I could really feel my life kind of draining away from me. And at the time, out of desperation, I remember just sort of crying out for a bit of strength. I managed to get through that, and eventually got to the hospital in the UK and realised that I contracted severe pneumonia and swine flu. So I was on life support, I had a machine breathing for me, and that was probably the first time that I really felt that, even though I was in the right place, but questioning what the future would look like, because I'm not even able to breathe. I couldn't do anything. So just what type of a man am I going to be? How am I going to be a husband? Sort of questions like that were coming up, and I had two choices to make. One is I could either kind of just like give up and give in, or I could just accept that well, this is what it is, and there's no other way through this but to kind of try and make it as good a situation as I can. And to do that, I needed to fight. I needed to kind of focus on what I could do next. So looking back now, so the recovery journey was very interesting, because physically I was doing very well. My wounds were healing pretty quickly. I was learning to walk pretty quickly. And it was the first time that I went home that my new reality really hit me hard. And what I wish I'd known at the time was the cycle of change that we face as people whenever something traumatic happens to us. Because at least if I knew what it looks like, I could kind of know what to expect and prepare myself. So the first time I went home, well, the last time I was at home, I was always very active. I was out running, cycling, taking the dog for a walk. I'd go out for coffee, things like that. And I was also very independent. I still had my future ahead of me and all of that kind of stuff. And now it was the complete opposite. I was stuck in a wheelchair. I didn't know what the future would hold. I was in pain, disabled, that kind of stuff. I felt very vulnerable. And in some ways became the thing that I feared the most, really, as an active soldier. So it was the sense of loss that I then experienced, which is what kind of kick-started this whole journey for me. The environment changed. I had to move out of my flat because there's no disabled access. and then ended up living with my mother-in-law's lounge, which we all know mother-in-laws, it's pretty tough at times as it is. So, but that was pretty tricky because the house wasn't very equipped for wheelchairs either. So it's almost like being in isolation. But on top of that was, the burden that it placed on the people around me, because they were having to work so much harder to support me. Because at the recovery centre, everything was already there, but at home it wasn't. And people didn't really know how to talk to me. They didn't really know how to treat me. So it was very awkward. So I felt very alienated. And one of the biggest things was the pressure then put on my wife at the time, because she was there as my support, but she almost suddenly had to do everything, and care for me as well as live her own life and also deal with this change. So that first sort of lost stage was quite hard to take, and then it sort of moved on to just all the doubt. How am I going to get through this? How are we going to get through this? Feelings of guilt because I'm at home and the guys are still out fighting a battle. The guilt because I couldn't be who I wanted to be for the people around me. I've always been the one that would generally be the protector or the carer or whatever, and I couldn't do that. And the questions of, well, why me? What have I done to deserve this? What's the purpose? What's the point? And it was, the doubt stage is very interesting, because the longer I asked these questions, the more I started focusing on the negative aspects of everything. And where focus goes, that's where energy goes. So naturally, all the negative emotions started taking over, and I started feeling very depressed, started feeling very miserable. I started becoming quite grumpy, and and because my first child was born actually in a year after I was injured, and I think that was probably the moment where for me it was incredibly tough, because I didn't know what type of a father I'd be because of my limitations. And then there's the whole fear of, well, maybe she'll resent me because I can't do the things other dads can. And there's all these questions going through my mind, all these doubts. And then there's like the danger zone, because I wasn't dealing with this in the right way. It's this whole spiral. It got to a point where, I just really felt that, I couldn't really seem to do anything right. And the more I tried, the worse things were getting. And I got again to like a crossroads where I had two choices to make. And I think one option for me was, well, if I can't seem to do anything right, I won't ever be able to get back to the life I had, to when I was still an active soldier and I was still living that dream and making a difference. So almost like, what is the point? What's the point in living? And I'm also making things worse for everybody else. So if I kind of removed myself from the picture, my suffering would end, and at least for them, they would kind of get over this and move on with their lives. And again, at this sort of junction, I could have done that, but in the back of my mind, were my children, because even though I felt that I was making their life worse, in some ways, there was also the thought of, well, if I did something like that, what would they think? One day they might think, well, hang on a minute, I could have tried. There must be something I could have done in order to make a difference. And I didn't, for them, I just didn't want to give up. So that was the thing that kind of just kept me thinking there has to be something else. And then out of my sort of desperation, that's when I realized actually I need the support. I need to reach out. I need to get the help. And that's when I kind of finally admitted that, I can't deal with this on my own, and got the support. And what helped me there, the first thing really was getting a team around me, support. So, and it doesn't have to be a big team. It was just obviously my wife at the time. I had a friend who basically is somebody I really trusted, and I could share my thoughts with, my feelings, and also my responsibilities, the things that I had to do in order to get better, to get through my recovery, whether it's, you know, going to the doctors or doing some kind of exercise or whatever. And this person would hold me accountable. And if I wasn't doing what I was doing, give me a kick up the backside to make sure that I get on with it. And also therapy, you know, just speaking to professionals, somebody who could really understand the emotions and then help me process everything that I've gone through. And it's really those three things together that helped me get to that stage of acceptance where, again, there was no looking back, because I processed it and I was thinking, oh, great, you know, and with this acceptance came this creativity, because now it's like, right, okay, well, this is me, this is what I am, this is who I am. That's what I want to do. You know, I want to take the dogs out, or I want to go for coffee. You know, I want to do the things I used to enjoy, but how am I going to do this? And then that's where creative solutions start coming into finding ways around this. And then in doing that, I was able to do more. And by doing more, I then felt better within myself. And then, you know, moved on to this sort of, I started to understand what my new boundaries would be, what I can and can't do, and what I should and shouldn't be doing. And then by learning the boundaries, I was able to really explore what my options are. And then I found that it's almost like life became like a bit of a blank canvas again. This is where like the second kind of tool came in, which is like a refocusing exercise. And I was sat at Headley Court, which is the recovery centre, and I just got a piece of paper because there were so many things going on in my mind, so many things I wanted to try. And I just turned the paper on its side and I split it into 3 columns. And at the top I wrote my values, because I've always been a firm believer that whatever our values are, if we stick to them, we're not going to go wrong. And I started to make sure that they're generally the same as what they were before. And then on the left-hand side, I wrote down all my ideas, you know, the things I wanted to do again. You know, whether it's just something basic like, well, learning how to sit in a wheelchair, or just learning to stand up, or, you know, taking the dog out, or, you know, going for a coffee. You know, just basic things, obviously back into getting cycling again, you know, what I want to do for a career. You know, everything went into that column. And then in the middle, I wrote down what my reality was. And, you know, my reality based on my physical and mental health, my environment, because I still had to kind of bear in mind that there's still a lot of things going on outside of my recovery centre. You know, I was backwards and forwards from home all the time. I still wasn't in my own place. I was still at my mother-in-law's house. So I had to think about that. Relationships, financial circumstances, and generally time as well. And the reason why I focused on these things is because, you know, whatever we do, or whatever I would wanted to do in life, if it doesn't fit with my reality, with any of my reality, then the chances are it's not going to succeed. And then that's just another setback. And then once I've got the reality filter in there, I've filtered all of my ideas through the reality, and then I ended up with a shortlist. And then in that shortlist, I just chose one thing, and then just broke that down into smaller steps. And then I had a look at who am I going to need to help me achieve this, what am I going to need, and then just started doing these things one at a time. And then, and then fortunately, before I knew it, I was able to go out with the dogs, go for coffees, learn how to cycle, and quite a few more things as well. So at times, things would go wrong. We know life is challenges at all times, no matter what situation we're in. And I needed something that I could rely on that, you know, for example, I was trying to cross a road one day and my leg fell off. There were cars coming. I panicked. I somehow managed to get off the road. And, you know, at that time, I was angry. I was frustrated. I was flustered. I panicked, you know. Anyway, it wasn't a good situation, and I sort of had to think I needed something that could just help me in moments like that to just, you know, find some sort of peace so I can control or focus on what I can control. And vocalizing for me is something that I could do at any time, no matter whether it's light or dark, no matter who's there. I can do it in my mind and it's quiet. So no matter what situation I am in, I can basically talk through what's happened. But the first thing was just focus on grateful or gratefulness. So in that particular example, just being thankful that I didn't get hit by a car, that, it could have been a lot worse than what it was. And that's something to be happy about. That's something to be grateful for. So that starts changing the mindset straight away. And then it was looking at the circumstances for what they are. And it's like, right, okay, well, my leg's fallen off. It is early days. It is what it is. And, but, I am able to deal with this. And if I can just focus on the things I can control, like my own behavior and my own response to this, I can choose how to react, because it is a choice. And then by just thinking and talking through this in my own mind, I could think, okay, well, the first thing I'm going to do is calm down. And then I'm going to just not care what anybody thinks, because there's the embarrassment as well. And just kind of go into my own mind a little bit and say, right, then think about how you're going to put your leg on. And then just sort of talk myself through the solution. And then by the time I've done that, it's like, right, well, let's do this. And then obviously also realizing or saying to myself, well, one day I'll look back at this and I'll laugh. And maybe one day I'll talk to people about this as an example of how to get through these circumstances. So, yeah.